Hey guys, today's video is on avionics, specifically glass panels. Today we're going to look at 3 different airplanes. Ryan's 182 that we've actually done a video on before. We're going to go into this, yes, the Citation. We're going to actually go in and have a look at the Mustang here and its avionics panel. And then we're going to look at a little bit on the G3x. So, staying on the ground, we're not flying, but it's going to be some pretty good information on glass panels and avionics. So let's get started. Okay, we're inside Ryan's 182, and we have pretty much stock instruments in this aircraft. There's been some upgrades over the years, but this is not glass, is the best way. So we'll call it, what can we say so Ryan doesn't get mad? Traditional. We'll use the word traditional instruments. So let me walk you through it real quick. So with our traditional instruments, it's these 6 pack instruments that you'll notice that we have our airspeed indicator, we have our attitude, or AI, attitude gyro, artificial horizon. This is our altimeter. Down here we have our turn coordinator. Here we have our HSI. Over here we have our VSI for vertical speed. So these 6, none are glass, none are digital, and this was the way of avionics back in the day. And the logic behind it was that, of course, we had redundancy because our airspeed was run off the pitot-static system, really on the ram air. These 2 are run off of the vacuum pump. Again, this is just an altimeter, so it's taking it from the static source. Same thing here. And this is running on electrics. So the idea was to have redundancy there. We've gone away from that now, and we've gone to the glass. And the glass is much more customizable. Although there still is some use for this, especially in a training environment, because it focuses you to look just at one instrument. And the instructor has the ability of failing that instrument with either covering it with the little cups that they get from Sporties, or just simply a post-it note. They stick it over top of there, and you have to learn how to use it with partial panel. So it's less intimidating. There's less information. Each one of these instruments is basically functioning as a sole source for just that item, i.e. airspeed is just showing me airspeed. Turn coordinator is just showing me the turn, right? So there's not any compound ones. If we look a little over to the right here, we're going to skip the center stack. You'll notice that Ryan has updated these instruments, and these are digital. So his fuel gauges are digital, fuel flow is digital, the tach is digital, manifold pressure. These are digital instruments, which are fantastic. They work very well. And we've even got a little engine analyzer down here in the corner, but it's not glass, okay? So again, each one of these instruments is just focusing on its own. There's not really a lot of crosstalk. So the center stack here, we have our traditional audio panel. We have, this is his Navcom, his second radio here. And then he's got the transponder. And then down the bottom, he's got a multifunction display that I don't know if it's going to show up all that well today. So all of those instruments, again, are basically running independent. So they're not taking information from one source and relaying it to the other. If we want to figure out our true airspeed, we're going to calculate it, and we're going to do it manually because it's not working in conjunction. Now, something that has happened in recent years is when these gyros fail, and they will, because they're probably the weakest part of the system, and they're going to fail. Either the vacuum pump's going to fail, or them themselves are going to fail, we now have new multifunction instruments like a G5 or a 275. And for the price point, you should put in a G5. If you're failed, put in a G5. It's a way better instrument. So this is, again, traditional. We're going to have a look now at the G1000 and see how that changed things. We're sitting in the cockpit, the Cessna Citation Mustang. And the Citation, this particular one, is G1000 equipped. So the Mustang came from the factory, G1000. So a little bit different from the 182, obviously. The 182 actually sort of came from the factory like it was. This one was built in. So G1000 is pretty much the standard now for all new aircraft. And it is done at point of manufacture. So it's not a retrofit item. It's something that you order. And let's have a little bit of a look at these three screens that we have in front of us, because the Citation's a little wider than obviously the 172 or 182 or the RV14. So they had room for three screens in here. So I'm going to walk you through it real quick. We have a PFD here. This is called the MFD, and this is also a PFD. So since we're a jet aircraft, on jets, we have redundancy. So this PFD on this side is its own world. It has its own pitot tube. It doesn't share anything with this side. This side, co-pilot, has its own pitot tube. It gets its own information, so they're two separate worlds. They do share this MFD. Now, I want to point out that G1000 here in the jet is no different than the G1000 that's in a 172 that you might be in flight school. This screen is identical. This screen is identical. The multifunction screen is a little bit bigger because they had the real estate for it. So in a lot of cases you would have a PFD, and the second PFD would act as the MFD. I'll show you that when we get to the RV14 next. Okay, so we're going to walk through the PFD here. So where we had the 6-pack instruments in the 182, all of our 6-pack instruments are here in one screen. This is our airspeed indicator. Then here, that is our artificial horizon. This is our altimeter. So right now it's reading 1570. If I went down to the second row of the 6-pack instruments, the turn coordinator is actually this guy up here. We then have our HSI or our DG, which is down here. And then we have our vertical speed indicator, which is this guy right here. In addition, because we have some other features here, we have our traffic display over here. We have our nav radios here. This is our primary and standby. That's radio 1, radio 2. We have our comm radios over here, standby and active, radio 1s, radios 2. And they identify them, so this tells me that ground is selected right now. It's in green, color-coded. All this information here is the scoreboard. The scoreboard is what's used to run the autopilot, telling you what's going on. So all my autopilot information would be here. And then down here, in addition to our heading bug, which is currently over here, should be up there, but we can switch and have different sources. So right now it's on GPS because it's magenta, but we could have one of the nav sources here and overlay that if we're flying an ILS. Our transponder is down here. Current time is over here. We have, this is outside air temperature. It's called RAT in jets, where it's OAT in regular airplane, where ISO would be. And then as we would be flying, if we were in the air, up here it would automatically calculate your true airspeed, and it would automatically calculate your ground speed, and it would show it to you in real time. So there's a lot of information on G1000, and it's all in this kind of setup. So even with our features where we have our transponder and we have our autopilot and we have different radios, these 6-pack instruments don't change. So in glass displays, it's always set up with the tape on the left being airspeed, the horizon AI being in the middle. The tape on the right is always altitude. VSI on the outside, and then whatever you're going to have down here is effectively an HSI down below. So if we now switch and look on this one, which is the primary, it's identical. The screen didn't change at all. We're showing N1, ITT, N2. We've also got pressurization down here, pressure differentiation of the pressure, and some trim information. If you're in a piston aircraft, that would probably be EGT, CHT. If you were turbocharged, it would probably be a TIT. The rest of the info, you're going to have some sort of oil temperature, fuel gauges. And then in jets, we call these CAS messages. Most of us in piston airplanes, these appear over here, which are things like if you've left the door open, oxygen's off, those types of things. So G1000 really revolutionized the game because it put all of the information in one compact area. Digitally customizable, but G1000 is all done at point of manufacture. So when you're ordering an airplane, generally they're almost all coming with G1000 now. It's a wonderful panel-based system, but it's not the only system. So we're now going to switch over to the RV14, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about that one. Okay, we've seen a 182, traditional avionics. The jet, we saw a G1000. And again, G1000 is G1000. Same if it's in a 182, 206, or a Citation jet. It's the same package, same instruments. And G1000's at point of manufacture. We now have an RV. So an RV is an experimental, home-built aircraft, if you would. Every manufacturer is different. There is no such thing as a standard RV. So now we get into a whole new world of avionics. Now what I'm showing you here is going to be the G3x system. The G3x is available for Cessna 172s, 182s, or experimental. So it's not limited to experimental, and I just want to make that clear before we get in there. And it's the latest iteration of the glass panel. So in other words, if you were going to have a computer and you had a desktop computer at home, which was awesome, did everything you wanted it to do, now you bought a laptop. It's a little different, but you don't have to relearn everything. We're not going through the same change that we went through in the 182. So let's hop in, have a look. Okay, we're inside the RV14, and in our RV14, we have a similar setup to the G1000 that were glass, but it's just a little bit of a different display. Let's have a look. In this case, this instrument here is our primary flight display. Moving over, we've got our autopilot up here. It's actually in the same place as we had it in the jet. We've got radio 2 here. And this is a Garmin 750, which is our GPS plus our other radio and our NavCom. And then over here, we've actually got our PFD2 or our MFD, if you want to call it that way. So we've got our map on here, and we've got engine gauges here. So it's a little bit of a different setup, and mostly because we just don't have the same real estate that we have in the jet. That all being said, I want to show you that our primary display here, so our 6-pack instruments, the airspeed's on the left, the AI is here in the middle. Over on the right, we've got our altimeter. We've got our turn coordinator, it's identical. We have our HSI, identical. And we have our VSI over here, identical. We have our scoreboard here, identical. We have our transponder up here. And we have our audio panel here. So whether if we want to talk on mic on 1 or 2, same thing with 1 and 2 here. We can control it all from here. So we actually have traffic here, just like we did before. We have, this is our flap position on the left. This is our elevated trim on the right, and then we have aileron trim here at the bottom. So same setup, same 6 that we had in the G1000 is here. You will notice that the fonts are the same, the display is the same, it has synthetic vision, just like the Jet had, but there is one big difference on the G3X, and that's the power of this guy, the finger. It's all touchscreen. So the G1000 is not touchscreen. So here I can select my headings, I can select my altitude I want to go to. Up here on the mics, I'm just clicking these to change them. I can get into the transponder information. All of that information is here. You'll notice that there's very few soft keys. There's really just the nearest, which we have on here by display, so we don't even need it. We have a direct to, we have the menu and the back button. That's it. And we've got the two little, what do they call them, rotary dials on either side. So now with modern avionics and modern technology, we're used to using touchscreens. All of us are. And we can switch our display here. We can actually have the MFD and the PFD kind of on the same screen if we want. Over here on our 750, we can load a map up on there. That could be a separate one. Or we could do our flight plan. It can be loaded there. All of my flight plan information can come from my phone using something like ForeFlight or Garmin Pilot, and it'll upload via Bluetooth automatically to this. The G1000 will do that as well, the NXi, and the Jet was NXi'd. But there's a last thing that this airplane has that I really want to show you, and I'm going to reach across over here to this last page, which is vertical power. If you zoom out and look at the entire panel the best we can here, you'll notice that we don't have a lot of circuit breakers. So we have one circuit breaker here because we have a power magneto. We have a couple over there. All the circuit breakers are actually in the G3X. I can turn things on or off all from here. Scroll down. And if you don't believe me, my landing light right now is not on, although we're in the hangar. But if I hit this button, and we just look at the jet wing there, so just leave it on the wing so it's on, it's off. It's on, it's off. And just scroll back to me. That's all I'm doing. So everything is controlled from here. So that's relatively new. I think it's only been out 3 or 4 years that you can run all of the circuit breakers, or most of them, and have control on there. When would I ever use this? This comes in a lot of plays with my existing controllers here, which this is my landing lights. This is not a lit switch. So if I'm flying at night, which let's face it, most of us don't do that often, but I could either rip all this out and put in a whole bunch of lighting here, or I can just turn my landing light over here because that's already lit because it's on the display. So there's countless options that you really have. The G3X is a wonderful option for retrofitting into aircraft. If you've got a 172 or if you've got a 182 and you want to get this functionality and this power, it has lots and lots of it. The G500 also is another option that you could put in there. It's a little bit of a smaller screen than the G3X, but it tends to work a little bit better with non-Garmin components. So you notice everything we have here is Garmin. G3X prefers that. But this panel is very, very capable. What you're going to learn in this panel is directly transferable over to the Jet, the G1000. They're almost identical. There's very little difference between them. It's just a little bit easier in terms of touchscreen. People like touchscreen. You do have to clean the screens more often. So that's a quick overview of the various avionics options, the current options that we have from Garmin. And if you got any questions, send us an email, sales@lincolnSkyways.com, or just leave a comment into the video, and we're happy to get into more stuff. The avionics discussion, we missed a lot of stuff because we could probably go hours on this, and we will do additional videos down the road that'll get a little bit more in depth. But this is just kind of give you an intro to, I was going to say good, better, best, but I would just say the old way we did it, and then the two options that we have now that are more current. So thanks for watching, and more videos on the way.